Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. We're glad you're here. And now our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
Hey everyone, Dr. Mike here. Do you work with people who seem just a bit too nice? They're so accommodating and non-confrontational that you're not sure exactly what they think. There's a lot of smiling and nodding, but little healthy opposition, so there isn't much outside of the box thinking, innovation, and meaningful improvement. Nobody wants to rock the boat, so nobody is doing anything extraordinary. There really aren't any moments of excitement or exhilaration in these nice, plain, vanilla worlds. Well, some organizations have a nice culture. And my guest today is going to argue that nice is unhealthy and weak. Instead, he calls for leaders to build teams that are cohesive, courageous, and kind. This is going to be a fun and informative and not nice conversation.
Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about better business results, stronger teams, more successful careers, and happier lives. Along the way, we hope to bust some biases, build some bridges, and have some fun. We're glad you're here. And now, our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
It's Dr. Mike Patterson, your host of the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about what it takes to be a great leader and how to build great teams. And sometimes we'll talk about new ideas in the world of business and commerce and how leadership applies in these new contexts. I'm the author of the book, Mission First, People Always, the definitive guide to balancing people and performance, and it's available on Amazon or wherever you buy your books online. I'm also a trainer, consultant, and coach focused on leader and team development. Now, let me remind you, as I always do, subscribe or follow, leave a review, and tell a friend about our podcast. I do this podcast because I sincerely want to help people. I want to help people lead better and to get more done with and through the people on their teams. I want you to be the kind of leader that brings out the best in the people around them and also drives business results. I believe everyone I invite to be a guest on the show can add value to your leadership journey. And I like to showcase talented people who care deeply about healthy organizations and good leadership, just like I do. And today is no exception. Let's meet our guest after the break.
Imagine a workplace where you feel connected to your work and colleagues, where people joyfully connect to the organization's purpose, mission, and leadership. At Workplace Peace Institute Leadership Academy, we bring evidence-based, brain-based learning to support leaders in creating life-affirming workplaces grounded in peace and dignity. Spark your leadership imagination at Workplace Peace Institute Leadership Academy. Together, let's reimagine work.
My guest today is Jim Uhl. Jim has 27 years of public safety leadership experience with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, the Lakewood Police Department, and Upland Police Department. And all these departments are in Southern California. He's the author of the new book, Stop Being Nice. It's a call for leaders to build teams that are cohesive, courageous, and kind. He's the founder of Breaking the Chain Consulting, and he's also the author of a previous book, The Arch, a framework for leadership and life. Jim holds a master's degree in organizational leadership, and he's a California Police Officer Standards and Training Master Instructor. He also teaches graduate and undergraduate courses in leadership at Woodbury University, and he's certified in a number of commercial training programs. Jim, welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. I'm honored and privileged to be here. I'm really excited.
Well, I'm excited to talk with you because you have a very interesting background. We've just been chatting a few minutes before we hit the record button, and you have been in law enforcement for a very long time. You are currently a sergeant with one of the Southern California police agencies. and you've seen a lot. In fact, I can't imagine everything you've seen. You're also a consultant. You've done graduate work in leadership. You care deeply about leadership, as I do. So I'm excited to talk with you about some ideas from your new book, Stop Being Nice, a call for leaders to build teams that are cohesive, courageous, and kind. And that's a kind of a provocative title. I can't wait to get there. But before we dive into the book, um, tell us how you got interested in leadership.
Yeah. So I would say, well, definitely being in law enforcement where you see both good and bad leadership, I just started to become attracted to and intrigued by the topic that you start to see some people that did leadership really, really well. And you wanted to see, well, what's the recipe? What's the secret for that? And just decided to dive into it, went into a graduate course, got my master's degree in it. And, just became just even more fascinated by less of the science, although there's obviously an enormous amount of research and science regarding leadership, but the artful side of it, the art and the practice of putting really good, healthy leadership into play. So that's what kind of just drew me in is, like you said, you see the good and the bad in this profession, and everything rises and falls on leadership, especially in that profession. If you're going to be asking people to do really hard, challenging things, everything rises and falls on good, healthy, cohesive leadership.
And I think so much of leadership, you use the term art. I think so much of the artful nature of leadership really comes down to the relationships we build with the people on our teams and how we relate to them in an artful way, but it's a way that honors people and really invites the best from them. Now, you're also a consultant, and I was curious about the name of your consulting firm. You've called your firm Breaking the Chain Consulting. I sense there's a story there. Tell us what that is.
You're very intuitive, my friend. Yes. So what my job or what my business sets out to do is to help people break the chains of bad leadership, break the chains of just some really outdated bad habits of what people maybe thought good leadership was, or just bad assumptions and myths that people have regarding leadership, and just break the chains of those bad habits and replace them with a healthier and more human approach to leadership.
So many of us, and if you've been around more than a year or two and you've lived in the real world, you've encountered some leaders that just suck the life out of you. They break the morale of the team, and it's tough to go to work every day. Those teams don't perform well. And I'm in that boat too. I've responded with this desire to make the future better for people who live in the real world and have to go to work. So you and I are on the same page on that front. And speaking of pages, let's jump into the pages of your book. Now, the title, Stop Being Nice. I mean, that grabs your attention. This isn't just another leadership book. What approach should you take when in writing it? Just kind of set the tone for the book, and then we'll dive in and start unpacking some of the ideas.
Well, you're right. It kind of is a provocative and a somewhat controversial title. In fact, when I even brought it to my editor, she was saying, I don't know, Jim, nice is just, a really important subset of kindness. And I'm like, okay, just hang with me, read the book and just see that I make a case here. And that's what I do with the book, is really set the stage that there is a marked difference between being nice and being kind. And I make an argument in the book, obviously I'll get into that, but I make the argument that all the things that are wrong in our organizations, unhealthiness, a lack of cohesion, disengagement, people not being purpose driven or values driven in the workplace, and just feeling so unfulfilled. And you've got this great resignation, all our social ills. It's my contention, and the argument I make in this book is that it's all because we have settled for the limiting constraints of just being nice. Now, where the topic for me just first came up was, there's a gentleman by the name of Patrick Lencioni. I'm sure most of your listeners have probably heard of him, because the book that really put him on the map, and it just celebrated its 25-year anniversary, was The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And in one of his other books, he brings up this idea that nice says this: I tolerate you, but I don't trust you. So in other words, I'll put up with your bad shenanigans or some of your bad behavior, but I don't trust you, or I'm not close enough in our relationship or value enough of the relationship to lean in and do something about it. which would be kindness. That's where the idea of the book evolved. And I take a deep dive into the book of what are the differences between nice and kind, and also kind of create a battle plan for kindness as well, so that you can cause your teams to be as cohesive and high performing as possible, because you're not going to achieve high performance without being cohesive and having this feeling, this affinity toward one another as a team.
You use the word trust, and I would think that in your line of work, law enforcement, trust is critically important because you get in some pretty tight spots, some dangerous situations, and you got to trust the man or woman on your right or left or who's coming in to support you on a call. How important, and am I right in terms of trust being of foremost importance in the law enforcement world or any high reliability sort of workplace?
You're 100% right, Dr. Mike. It's the foundation of everything. But, trust is so much more than just truth and honesty. I'm sure you can think of people that have been truthful with you and honest with you, but they made you feel small, or they put you down. They made you feel ashamed or embarrassed in front of people. Trust is so much more than just truth and honesty. And one of the best definitions I like to give when I'm coaching and consulting is the best definition of trust is this: building the confidence of others. When you build the confidence of another human being, they will trust you because you've poured into them. They know you have their back, that there's not a knife in it. You actually have their back. So you're 100% right. That trust, and also that vulnerability-based trust, a willingness as a leader to admit your mistakes, admit your shortcomings. Hey, here's what I'm good at and strong at, and then here's the things I stink at. A willingness to say I'm sorry and ask for forgiveness with your team. A willingness to say, I'm a little bit nervous here. I'm a little bit scared. I don't know what we're going to go do here, but you know what? We're going to figure it out together. That type of trust transcends just merely telling the truth and being honest with people. That's what brings cohesion, that type of trust.
Now, that makes a lot of sense to me, but I have to wonder, so many leaders don't operate that way. Why is that? Why do so many settle for nice? And I still want you to tell us what, paint a picture of what nice looks like on many teams, but why do so many leaders settle for that? If we're looking for trust, we're looking for performance, we know how to get there, why don't we go there?
Well, because, and this may sound, again, a little provocative to say this, because as human beings, we are lazy and self-centered. We have a tendency to do things that are in our best interest, which is great for our survival. It's great for our individual survival. In fact, it even works good with teams to do things that are in the best interest of your team. But our brains are designed in such a way to be lazy and self-centered. The whole thing that your brain wants to do is just keep you alive and burn as few calories as possible doing so, because it's saving itself for something bigger or a bigger fight. And so when we have to lean into things that, we talk about like this thing about leadership, it's hard, it's arduous, it takes sacrifice, it's sometimes painful to do it, emotionally painful to do some of these things with leadership. So the reason why people take the easy road out is because we're wired that way. And so good leadership is a constant fight. It is a constant battle to go against the grain of your selfish, egocentric tendencies, to take the easy way out.
In the book, you talk about something you call the sinking six of nice.
Yeah.
And so I hope my readers order your book. It's available at Amazon and wherever you buy digital books. I'm quite sure it's a good, solid read. So I hope my listeners go buy it, but whet their appetite a bit. Tell us what you mean by this sinking six. And then we're going to talk about the eternal nine, and then we'll talk about something that equals 15. I'm sure. No, I'm not sure. But what do you mean by this sinking six of nice?
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit. Let's look at where I'm a big believer. Words matter. Words have a specific DNA, if you will. And so I love to research and look up what words really mean at their very root and at their very base. So the word nice came onto the scene around 1250 to 1300 CE. We now call it Common Era. So when it first appeared in Middle English, the word nice meant foolish or stupid. In Old French, it meant silly or simple. And in Latin, the term was necius or necius. And what the word meant was ignorant or incompetent, ignorant or incompetent or incapable. And so the original origins of the word nice, it wasn't a compliment. I mean, you could hand in like, maybe uh, a memorandum, or you could hand in a piece of work from a project. And if I'm your supervisor, back then, what it originally meant was I would look at it and I'd go, oh, that's nice. It wasn't a compliment. But over the years, we've muddied it down to mean, kind of, pleasing or amiable, and there's always this kind of go along to get along aspect of nice. In fact, and here's how we typically use it. We'll use it like, I had a really nice time at the party yesterday, or they look really nice. And don't forget, we've always been reminded by mom with this trusty reminder that if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all.
Right.
And my contention is that's exactly the problem, is that there's so many things we don't say about or talk about in the workplace. So if we have a team member who's doing things that are taking away from the life of the team, that's hurting or harming the team in some way, we just tolerate it. We put up with it because the nice thing to do is just not say anything. You don't want to embarrass them. And that's what we'll do. We'll justify it. Our mind will just justify, I don't want to have this conversation with this person about their performance, or even the harder things, their behaviors. So I'll lean away from it. But when we do that, when we allow the team to get hurt and harmed in that way, then what we're doing is choosing something that is foolish, stupid, silly, simple, ignorant, and incompetent. Why would we do that to our teams? But that's so much of where our teams are at. And that's obviously represented in the fact that our teams are so disengaged. I mean, the current disengagement rate right now is about 68%. It's been hovering around 70% for the past 22 years that Gallup has been tracking this. So that's the sinking six of nice. And when we settle for that, when we settle for things, the outcome is going to be some of the things that we've seen, not only in the workplace, but in society. Rising crime rates, spousal abuse, child abuse, depression rates are up, suicide rates are up, substance abuse rates are up. That's foolish, stupid, silly, simple, ignorant, incompetent for us to accept that this is okay. And instead, we need to lean into having some of these different conversations that transcend just being nice. And there's an antidote to nice.
Well, what is the antidote to nice? How do we step up to nice and do better?
Yeah, we need to transcend above it. And the antidote to that, it is kindness. Now, oftentimes nice and kind are used interchangeably, but they are 100% different. In fact, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say as they're incompatible, but they are distinctly and markedly different.
How so?
So the word kind comes from the Greek word Christos. And what that means is useful, serviceable, and good. So if I do have a tough, challenging, hard conversation I've got to have with a spouse, a friend, or a coworker, or an employee, a direct report, I'm giving them information that is useful, serviceable, and good for them because maybe they didn't know, and also so that they can get better, so that they can become a better part of the team. The word Christos also, when the Bible was first translated into Greek, whenever they used this term Christos, it was always referring to things that in the Bible that God considered eternally good. And so this is really captured in a particular passage in the Bible. It's in Galatians. And the things that are considered eternally good, if these things were in the workplace on a consistent basis, wouldn't this be good? Things like love, being fixated on putting others first, joy, remaining happy and hopeful and positive, even when things are seemingly falling apart, bringing peace, which is bringing comfort and harmony to other people, a good, stable work environment, things like patience, a willingness to endure and to be patient with people and their growth and their development, gentleness, restraining yourself, not saying things too harshly or doing things too harshly and restraining ourselves, doing things that are good. Goodness is doing things that are honorable and worthy of admiration and respect. Faithfulness, being a promise keeper, someone who keeps their word. There's a match between what I say I believe and what I actually do. And then there's self-control, resisting your own egocentric, self-centered temptations to sometimes not do good, or at least not good in the best interest of everyone else, which all culminates into kindness, which is being generous, giving others things that are useful, serviceable, and good, even to those who are difficult.
That would certainly be good fruit to manifest in the workplace. There's no doubt about that. So how does the fruit of the eternal nine, and Christ followers call this the fruit of the Spirit,
Yes.
To tie into your reference and to the book of Galatians in the Bible, where Paul talks about this is the output that we see if you are aligned spiritually with a transformed life. So, how does it show up in the workplace? You've worked in a very unique environment for a very long time, essentially a paramilitary organization. You're on the streets, you're dealing with people who probably don't, superficially, we might think, well, they don't respond to kindness, they only respond to toughness. Tell us how this all kind of plays out in your world.
Yeah. One of the stories I get into towards the back end of the book, which is a case study of something that actually happened to me, is so we had, obviously, most people know about the Route 91 Las Vegas massacre that happened. And we had several law enforcement officers in our department who attended that event. Incredibly traumatic for them. And one of the officers who came back obviously was traumatized by this. And during a particular briefing setting, they were showing a training video. And in the video, there happened to be gunfire, and it caused that officer to get upset and have to remove themselves from the room. That person went, got the help that they needed. It didn't take long. They just had to kind of talk and process all, some of the horrific things that they went through. And then fast forward to a briefing that I was in, and this person was coming back and was going to come and work an overtime assignment with us. And the officer had been off for about 5 days, but they were going to come in and help us out. And I was announcing that to the team during briefing. And one of the officers just kind of looks around the room to see if anyone's thinking what he's thinking. And he just very kind of rudely and thoughtlessly blurts out, "Is this officer even ready to go?" And I was kind of shocked and taken back by that. And the other thing where I'm really sensitive to that is I'm part of our peer support team. So I know that this person is having a very normal reaction to a very terrible, abnormal situation. So it's totally reasonable that this person, and this person didn't know, the officer who said this didn't know what this person had been through exactly, didn't know all the things that the work that the person had done to get themselves ready to come back. And so I had to turn and look at that officer and talk about the hard stuff. Like, I'm angry at this person because what he said was rude and terrible and not life-giving to an officer who's not even there to defend him or herself. And I just looked at him and said, "Hey, everyone, briefing's over and I'll talk with you later." And one of the first rules of leadership is you don't want to have these tough conversations when you're angry. And I was angry. So let some time subside, get under self-control, be patient with it. It's not something I had to, just hammer at right away. And then later in the day, approached this officer and said, "Hey, can you help explain to me why you thought that was going to be a good thing to say? Would you have said that if that person was here?" And the conversation was a little rocky at first. But one of the things I led with and started with was, "Hey, I want to have this conversation with you because I care about you. I care about your reputation. I care about your career, and I care about you as a person. And you are at your absolute best when you are being good and kind to your fellow officers. And we are not going to be a team that eats our own. And what you did is eating one of our own officers and licensing everyone else to go do that." And again, he was a little resistive at first, but then when he heard the caring component, "Hey, I'm doing this because I care about you, not because I want to make you feel small or little," he responded very well, letting him know, this is where, seeing his strengths, you are at your best when you're actually bringing these types of things, my friend. And ended up being a great conversation, ended up in a big hug with one another. I said, "Hey, I know you're not happy with everything that I said, but I still love you, man. And I've got your back, and I know you got the back of everybody here." He needed to be told information that was useful, serviceable, and good. And what it created was a deeper bond of love between one of us. We could still go through this rough patch and still be joyful around one another. We were patient with one another. We heard one another out. So yeah, that's what kindness looks like in real life and in a workplace. And even with tough, hardened police officers, this stuff works.
You're a sergeant, and it sounds like you were leading a roll call kind of meeting, perhaps like we see on television. And you had this conversation with one of the officers there in the room. How does it work? And you're the sergeant, so you're the superior, air quotes. He's the guy that reports to you, perhaps. How does it work with peers? I mean, does this kindness stuff work among peers in the same powerful kinds of way it does from a leadership perspective?
Great question, Mike. And the answer is an unequivocal yes, because there's a lot of these maybe quote unquote non-life giving behaviors that happen or performance issues that happen that I'm not going to witness. I don't see, but that the peers see it. And so what typically happens is another officer will come to me complaining about what another officer said or did. And then what happens now is my response is, because I didn't see it. And of course I could go talk to the officer about it, but that's going to erode the cohesion of the team if it's me, because now that person's obviously going to know that it's the other person that ratted them out to me, so to speak, for lack of a better term. And instead teach them or ask them, hey, have you had a conversation with that officer or with that person? No, you're the boss. That's your job. And it's like, no, this is all of our jobs. This is all of our jobs on how to have and to lean into some of these tough conversations. So my job as an officer or as a sergeant or as a supervisor or wherever you are in an organization, your job is to help coach these people up on how to have these tough, uncomfortable conversations. And so I coach up my people on, the term I use is called lead with heart. How I led that conversation with that other officer, I'm going to teach them. It's really important to lead with heart. So to start with, hey, do you mind if I share a conversation with you about something that's been on my heart and mind? That works. And the reason why that works is number one, you're giving up your power. You're asking them, do you mind if we share a conversation about this? I'm giving them a say as to whether or not we have a conversation. Now, unless that person's a cyborg, they're going to say yes. The other reason why that statement and that lead in works so well, Mike, is I put this heart component. I'm letting them know I want to share a conversation with you, which means it's not just going to be me yelling at you and telling you how it is or berating you. That I'm leading with the fact that this is something that's been on my heart and mind. And then when they say yes, coach them up on how to do this is then followed up with, hey, I want to have this conversation with you because I care about you. I care about the team. I care about our cause, our purpose. Teaching them those skills on how to have uncomfortable conversations and to say things that actually work, like give them the truth of what you're thinking and feeling. If they did something that caused you to think and feel a certain way, then let them know. So my job is to teach them how to have these tough and challenging and kind-centered conversations as well. So it's not just me. It can't be me doing it all the time, because if they just come to me, it's going to erode the cohesion of the team. What strengthens the cohesion of the team is when you can get an entire team of people that know how to use and embrace these skills.
Jim, I'm reminded of two famous references here as you shared that experience. The Apostle Paul, again, we're quoting the Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians, says, speaking the truth in love. Yeah. And that was a nice, concise description of what it seems you were doing there, or encouraging this colleague to do. And when we speak the truth in love, people grow to maturity, and mature people are more effective and more productive and able to build strong teams. And then I'll quote that great theologian, Teddy Roosevelt, who said, people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care for them. So
100%.
That's those two ideas came to mind. So how does all of this sounds wonderfully encouraging from a human perspective, from a relational perspective, but how does it drive performance? I mean, a lot of my listeners are in the marketplace. They've got to hit numbers every month, and they got to make payroll, and they got to do things that are hard, that involve money, and we got to make money, and time is money, and all those things. So how does what we're talking about here drive performance?
Okay, so it's really tempting for some people to say, okay, yeah, these are just soft skills. And I'm here to say there's nothing soft about any of this. In fact, doing these things like the Eternal Nine and being kind with one another as a team, it's the hard currency that we must pay if we want top performance. So here's an example I like to give is when you look at Vince Lombardi, one of the best coaches on the gridiron with the Green Bay Packers. I mean, this guy was tough. He was all about winning. He said things tough. He was all about toughness. But one of the things he said is that, you've got a winning team when you have this special feeling. There's that F word, not the one we're typically used to saying, that F word of feeling, that feeling that we have towards one another, that some people call like team spirit, that idea that John to the right of me knows that I've got his back. I'm going to block for him. And if I don't block for him, because I care about the person to the left and to the right of me, they're going to get hurt. And I can't let this person get hurt. So even he knew their winning, their success was 100% predicated not just on the numbers. He knew that the numbers were going to come the closer, the tighter, the more cohesive, the more of these strong feelings of love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control, and kindness that we bring to one another. That's where performance goes exponentially. Now, I'm going to give another example that's out of the workplace, but one of the examples I give in the book is that everybody who's ever changed this world for the better, they never did it through an approach of being nice. They transformed the world or transformed their world because they chose the hard, arduous, courageous, self-sacrificial way of being kind. They were kind of bad boys and bad girls. They were rule breakers. They were nonconformists. We've brought up, we can talk about Jesus, Martin Luther King Jr., and I bring up several examples. Mother Teresa, but here's one that I really talk about in the book is Miep Gies. Now, a lot of people, when I hear that name, they're like, who's that? You know who she is. Everybody knows who she is because they've heard of the family that she helped, which was Anne Frank's family, to be precise. Well, Miep Gies, it is not over-exaggerating that when she made the decision to help the Frank family, which Otto Frank was her boss, and she helped these three families, it's not an understatement that she ran the risk of being executed. After 2 months of hiding her friends, Nazi Germany passed a law. If you get caught helping a Jew, you're going to be executed. And look at how by doing this, she didn't just do it for 2 days. She didn't do it for 2 weeks. She did this for 2 years until somebody came along, probably somebody with less sustainable values and more situational values. When things got tough, somebody betrayed her and betrayed the family. And so even when they got rounded up, she goes down to the police station and bribes them to try and get them to let them go, to get the police to let them go. This was anything but nice. This wasn't soft. I mean, the entire time she has the family there, she's sacrificing herself for other people. Boom, you've got love. In these cramped quarters, she's still bringing these people, giving them happiness and hopefulness. She's bringing them joy. She's bringing, the world is falling apart around them, and she's showing there's still people here that care about you. She's bringing them peace. She was patient. Again, this wasn't just a 2-day thing or a 2-hour thing. This was 2 years of inconvenience. Wow, that's patience. Gentleness. I mean, look at this act of, even when they were arrested, she held on to Anne Frank's diary so that she could, and the only reason why we know so much of the story is that because she was able to hand that back to one of the only surviving members, which was Otto Frank. And we have this because of that. So this was her living out the eternal 9. And I'm here to tell you, those aren't soft skills. That took a lot of courage. It took a lot of self-sacrifice to do the honorable, good, and right thing. And it all revolved around kindness. That if you can get teams acting like that and being like that towards one another, that's hard currency that's going to increase performance, period.
What a wonderful example. We're talking with Jim Uhl, the author of the new book, Stop Being Nice, a call for leaders to build teams that are cohesive, courageous, and kind. Jim, it's hard to believe, but we're nearing the end of our time. And for those of my listeners who are regulars, they know that I always like to end every conversation with a very practical question. And that question is this: what's one thing that all of us as leaders can begin doing right away that will make us better leaders tomorrow, next week? What's some idea from your work that you would encourage us to put into action right away?
Right now, here's the first thing that you can do. Ask your team the single most important question that a leader must ask their team. And we never do this. But if you do this, I promise you, this is what opens the door to having these types of conversations with your people. Ask them this simple question. Every member of the team, if you are doing something that was hurting or harming the team, would you want to know? No, everybody's going to look at you and they're going to nod their heads up and down. It's like, oh yeah, obvious. But then follow up with this. So after you ask this very, very important question, ask them, hey, have there been times among this team where maybe you've seen somebody do something that hurts, harms, or takes away from the team, and you didn't do anything about it, or you didn't say anything? And then watch them get all quiet and serious and such. And then if nobody admits it, you as the leader be the first one to admit it and say, hey, I've done that. I've taken the lazy and kind of the coward's way out, not had some of these tough conversations with folks. And then that usually encourages other people to, yeah, I've done that too. It's a great time to start talking to them about the differences between nice and kind. And then go around the room and say, hey, we're not going to be a team like that. We're going to be a team because we care enough about each other, and we love each other enough that we are going to have tough conversations with one another when people are doing things to take away from the team. So then you just go around and you're like, hey, Joe, if you were doing something to hurt, harm, or take away from the team, would you want to know? And you need to say yes, say out loud, and tell them, not me. Tell this entire team. And it evolves into them going, hey, team, I need you to tell me. I want you to tell me. And you can even ask as a leader, why do you want to know? And they'll say stuff because I care, because I want to know. I want to be better. I don't want to hurt this team. What a great, useful, serviceable, and good thing you can do just by asking one simple question. And here's the beauty of it, Dr. Mike, is now that everybody has began by licensing one another to say something to them, it takes away the defensiveness. You've created this social contract that invites people where you're inviting someone, hey, please tell me these things. And then if that person says, hey, no, I don't want to hear from you. Whoa, no, you're violating our social contract as a team. We are going to talk about this because you said you wanted to know. What a powerful thing that you can do to start opening the door to having tough, challenging, but kind-centered conversations.
I love that. That's powerful, Jim. Thanks for sharing that. You've probably piqued the interest of many people with respect to learning more about the ideas in your book. The book, again, is Stop Being Nice, available on Amazon, wherever people buy books. How can people get in touch with you? We're going to put your links in the show notes, but if somebody is excited about something you've said today and they just want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so the best way to just get a hold of me directly is you can get a hold of me at Juhl, that's Juhl, at breakingthechainconsulting.com. You can also visit my website at breakingthechainconsulting.com. If you are interested in the book, and I do hope that your listeners are, because I just think it's going to be something that really intrigues, captivates, and most importantly, gives them tangible skills and strategies and tools to use. It's not just theoretical stuff. No, this is where the rubber meets the road. And if they're interested in it, they can buy the book. If you want a hardcover copy of the book, you can buy that at stopbeingnicebook.com. If Kindle is more of your thing or Audible is more of your thing, and it's me who recorded the book, did it in Nashville, Tennessee, which was kind of cool, then you can get that on Amazon. You can get it on audio or you can get it on Kindle. And if people are interested in wanting to book I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. So if people are interested in that, we can do one-on-one executive coaching or even just line level coaching. There's all types of services that I provide that can that help teams become more cohesive, more courageous, healthy, and high performing.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for being a great guest on the Mission First People Always podcast. And thank you for your service to our community as a police officer for all these years. I know you're in the process of transitioning to consulting and writing and speaking full-time, but for all those years that you put your life on the line for us here in the Southern California community, thank you. I hope to work with you at some point in the future, engage with you, because I really like your ideas and where you're coming from. In fact, I'm always encouraged by people who want to make a positive difference in the world through their work and have a positive impact on people and bring out the best in people. And that's certainly where you are. They're out there. We're out there. This group of people who listen every week are here, and we're committed to doing that. So that's why I do this podcast, to help you be better and hopefully make the world a better place, even if it's through one leader at a time. Until next time, mission first, people always.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to create a stronger, more people-centric and empowered culture for your organization, visit drmikepatterson.com.